how's this for glamour? I mean, this is the reason we're in HD tonight. Freya Leach and the wonderful Carolyn Marcus. Lovely to see you both. So, energy prices. I want to get back to the point I was trying to make in the editorial tonight, which is I thought if you broke a promise as clear as this one, that there was a price to pay. But it seems, the modelling and international this, BS, all right? If Tony Abbott promised to stop the boats, but more boats were coming in after his first term in office, Carolyn, we know what would happen. So why doesn't the media hammer such an obvious failure, or more likely, lie?
Because I think we all know the answer is that most of the media are all in on this green left renewable energies pipe dream. And so they will make excuses for why that promise wasn't able to be kept. And let's face it, that promise was made, I think, over 100 times before the election. It wasn't made just once in passing, and it didn't have an asterisk at the end of it, depending on what's happening in terms of world conflicts, whether or not we can keep this promise.
It was in their ads.
It was pretty clear.
It was in their ads.
And not only did they not bring the power bills down by 275, they increased it by about that much or more in New South Wales. They added that much on top of the power bills. So, look, I think it was really disingenuous how Chris Bowen tried to frame things today in terms of making it all about coal-powered fire stations and nothing about the cost of renewable energy and transmission lines.
Because in the end, I mean, Freya, as I said, for as long as I've sat here and I've argued with people about this, I'm not in denial of climate change. I'm not in denial of renewable energy at its full capacity. But we had to move from the car that won Bathurst, and they're trying to tell us that a car with 3 wheels can still do it. There is a cost of transition, there is a delay, there is a complication. But they promised exactly the opposite. The 275 thing was lipstick on a pig. It was them trying to say, look, we're basically doing the Bill Shorten thing, but how do we find a new way to sell it? Look, let's just pretend, pluck a number, and then when we'll never be held accountable because the people in the gallery, they want us, they'll push it down, look the other way. I think normal people will see this for what it is, which is just as big a broken promise as carbon tax or the no-cuts stuff.
I totally agree with you, Paul. And the thing is, I think politicians, and particularly Labor, often falls into this trap where they try to deal in rhetoric rather than reality. Yeah. It doesn't matter how many times you promise something as a politician. It doesn't matter how many times your skewed modelling can produce some number that will say power prices will go down by $275. At the end of the day, reality is what matters, because as we just saw from the gentleman you interviewed earlier, reality actually, that is what impacts people. The rhetoric, that's what we see floating around the media, gets pushed by the elites, but it's the reality that average Aussies have to deal with, and Labor has failed spectacularly. But not only did they promise higher power prices, in their ads, they also promised cheaper mortgages.
Correct.
And we heard Angus Taylor on Shari's program before, mortgage interest costs have gone up by $50,000 under Labor. So they failed on basically every economic metric.
So, and I know sort of there's some people in and around the Liberal Party who bristle a little bit when I talk about this. I'm talking about, I want the same outcome that a lot of people do, which is change in government. Where is the bombing on social media of how it started, how it is, right? These endless comparisons, because I don't see it. I see some, I see, clever sort of use of him in the Yes T-shirt. Hammer this message home. What they promised and what happened. Because people can't stand a broken promise, and sure, the 6pm news will find a way to change the subject. The think pieces are all about Dutton, including some absolute garbage almost today, where they're trying to go on about Peter Dutton and flights to sporting events. What about Annika Wells? What about the sporting minister and her use of gifts and flights? Oh, no, it's just about Peter Dutton. It's just this stuff.
Such a double standard.
It is. Well, and it's just not going to be copped anymore. They're going to sit there and just go, little old Paul, little old Sky News, bugger that. What about the army of people that are watching? Have these arguments, have these fights. I give you the data. Do it, debate and fight. All right. So, Peter Van Onselen, writing in the Daily Mail, has echoed a point that I made a little earlier in the week, that an opinion poll saying 80% of people basically say spend when it comes to the upcoming federal budget. That is a bit of a green light to Labor going into a budget that will go into an election. Put simply, do you think that the Australian public can be bought, or are the fundamentals of the lies going to be enough that they'll take the money but they'll vote another way? What do you think, Karen?
Look,
Gotta be honest.
Peter Van Onselen has got a fair few things wrong
Yes.
in his time. There was one thing, and I can't remember what he said, but he said, if I get this wrong, I will eat my hat. As far as I know, he hasn't eaten his hat, but he definitely got it wrong. So I don't necessarily go along with his predictions, but it's going to be a big spending budget, as everything that we're hearing. They're already throwing everything at Medicare. The opposition's coming back with offering the same. Don't know where the money's coming from. I'd like to think that people are more sophisticated than being able to be bought off with, a little bit of money here and there, which we're all going to be paying for later because we just do not have the funds in Australia. We don't have it in our budget to be able to afford this. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
But and look, reality is there is a section that can be, right? I mean, there's a bunch of people that are as invested as us. There's people that kind of pay attention. There's a bunch of people that are sort of going to be forced to vote, all right? How all of that impacts and messaging we'll all see together. But Freya, at some point, I mean, this is the thing. Victorian Labor was able to follow this model for multiple elections, and now it looks like they're in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
Queensland Labor was able to do this for multiple elections, and of course they ended up losing. This is only a first-term government. So do you think that poll is just going to give them a sense of green light and people won't care? Because, Dutton bad.
Yeah. Well, I think it really is going to come down to who wins the economic argument. So what we've seen in Australia, this has been repeated over and over again. I'm sure everyone listening knows this. We've had the worst decline in living standards in the developed world. Labor is trying to blame that on global factors, basically anything other than themselves. Of course, the reality is slightly different. They've spent an extra $347 billion. All that has done is push up inflation. Wages haven't really moved, and therefore you get the huge decline in living standards. If people buy that it's just the global factors, that it's not really government spending.
We didn't make any decision.
They were just
We didn't let
trying
in
to
a
help
million
with cost
people.
of living. Exactly, that it was just to support economic growth and skills shortages, then they will get away with it, unfortunately. But if the coalition can prosecute the argument, which I believe is actually the truth and the correct argument, that it is actually due to extreme levels of government spending and super high migration, then I think people will put up a fight. But it really could go either way at this point.
How is the coalition going to prosecute that argument when they're offering to put the same amount of money into Medicare that the government is? So people look at the options and see, is there a viable alternative to this big spending government?
Well, and this is the problem, right? And Laura Jay's taught me this many elections ago, and it's a lesson that I've taken into my DNA. People will always nod their head about should the government, crack down on debt? Absolutely. What should they cut spending? Nothing, right? Do we demand action on climate change? Absolutely. Am I willing to pay for it? No. So if you are able to tighten that, then, that's the thing.